Essendon. Stephen, good afternoon to you.
G'day, guys. Look, I feel like the selection process for the Essendon coach has been undermined by the way James Hurd's able to use his media exposure to pump himself up for the job. I don't even know who the other candidates are. All we hear is James Hurd left, right and centre, and I know he's got board connections with Andrew Welsh, former teammate, and I know the fans and the club seem to favour him for nostalgic reasons, but I feel like the other candidates are feeling overwhelmed, and I don't think, if this was a court case, I mean, it sounds like he's prejudicing the jury before he's even gotten a job, and I feel like the other candidates are missing out.
Yeah, it's only got more complex since I was out of town, Stephen, and it's not only James Hurd who's talking himself up, but can we play what Matthew Lloyd said on 3AW on Thursday? Let's have a listen to Matthew Lloyd.
Well, I was with him on Wednesday night at an event. And so the passion, the hunger, the thirst for this job, I've never seen anything like it. So they spoke openly about that and the fact that he heard from Andrew Welsh. I'm not of the view that it has to be an Essendon person and that I just want the process to play out and be the best candidate for it. He's got a full presentation ready to go, a holistic presentation on everything, not just how we're going to win a game of football, but what the club needs and where it's been with development and recruiting and the works and everything and staff he'd like to bring with him, the lot. So people would want to come and present well. If they're going to give him a genuine chance and they aren't just giving him a token interview and they give him a genuine chance, he's going to be tough to knock off from a presentation point of view with the thought process around what he's going to bring. I
apologise, Bruce. It wasn't Thursday night. It was last night. On 3AW's match
Strong
coverage.
Words.
Very strong words. I still find it hard to understand how someone who came into coaching with no experience and was gone within 3 or 4 years for reasons that we know well and has done nothing really more except for being coaching director, is it, at Port Melbourne in the VFL. Senior coaches and assistant coaches tell me it's too hard to do it without that experience. Now, believe what you like. I still think, to answer your question, Stephen, although we're hearing funny things out of Essendon, that John Longmire is still under consideration. I'm also hearing that, there are a lot of assistant coaches, including James Kelly is one. I know that Daniel Giansiracusa has ruled himself out, but Hayden Skipworth, there's a long list of... I don't know whether Jamie Graham is looking at Essendon. He's certainly in the Carlton process. I don't believe that James Hurd is the only candidate, but you're right. The noise is loud, and it's hard to see the forest for the trees at the moment. And I certainly felt that the board were not considering James Hurd a month ago, and yet here he is being given an interview. So that does surprise me.
Thanks for your call, Stephen. Just before we go to our next caller, Leigh, if John Longmire was in the mix, would you make the process, this one of those great football words that we like to trot out so often, would you make the process more flexible for the way you're assessing John Longmire? Well, it wouldn't even be a John Longmire application, would it, compared to an untried assistant coach who's got 8 to 10 years in the system? It would have to be a different process, again, in inverts, for Longmire compared to some of these other guys.
Well, we believe they've gone past the headhunting. In other words, you'd think if you wanted John Longmire, you'd headhunt him, try to convince him to come. That doesn't seem to be the situation, I gather. They want
Ditto Ken Hinkley, maybe?
Any of them. Doesn't. Yeah, well, yes. Either you go and headhunt someone, and if you can't get them, then you go through the interview process. You interview half a dozen, and eventually pick the best of the available candidates. We gather they're in the interviewing process. If I'm John Longmire, I'm not going to an interview.
Do you want me or not?
He deserves to be headhunted.
Yep.
And you could probably say the same about Ken Hinkley. Just about. So I'm not quite sure if Essendon are interviewing, then James Hurd, he's got a huge, undeniable public profile, hasn't he? And as an Essendon person, so if the people and the interview panel are strong enough, then he's just another candidate. And if he comes out at the top of that interview process, so be it.
What bucket would Simon Goodwin fall into? Headhunted or go through the process?
Oh, look,
That's up to the club. See, it's up to the club.
Yep.
It's up to the club to. We know there's 3 clubs that are looking for coaches, right? It's up for each of them to say, what are we looking for? are we looking for a specific individual? And that doesn't mean you don't talk to a few people. But are we looking for eventually? Are we looking for a specific person and we headhunt that person, or do we just open it up like some clubs have done? Say Melbourne, I think they had an interview process, and Stephen King came, got it from the interview process, and it would appear Essendon doing that. Now, if they're strong enough, the people making the decisions, James Hurd's profile is good for Essendon in a way, as long as you think he's going to be the best available senior coach.
Do you have a view about the lack of coaching experience?
Oh, I think it's a handbrake. It's obviously better. I would have thought, and that's why I think Nathan Buckley's done a very, very smart thing to go back and be involved at club level after being out for 3 or 4 years. I reckon 3 or 4 years, if you're out any longer than that, you lose touch with what's currently going on, because football departments are evolving all the time.
Gary, good afternoon to you. Welcome to 3RW Footy.
Thank you, and great article by Caroline this morning in The Age, which I wanted to discuss about Indigenous pathways. We had the Northern Territory Thunder playing in the NEFL, giving Indigenous young fellas a chance. They'd fly to Sydney or Brisbane every second week, play against quality opposition, learn the professionalism about travelling and whatnot. And when we got rid of the NEFL, we cut that pipeline. And I just find it ironic that the AFL now are bleating about diminished numbers when I felt that was a really good opportunity, drawing kids from Central Australia, Tiwi and Darwin. And what do those young fellas do now?
Look, Gary, it's not news that Indigenous playing numbers are down. They're terrible in the AFLW and they continue to drop in the AFL. And, at the moment we've got two brilliant players in Tyson Stengel and Bobby Hill on the outer at their clubs and obviously suffering real problems. And I know the AFL is trying, and they've put together this subcommittee to look at an extra list spot, and they say they're spending more money on game development. And game development gets 10% of the game's entire revenue, Bruce. And I still think that more money should be ploughed into the Indigenous pathways. The numbers, WA under-16 carnival recently, not one Indigenous player. I think the under-18s, national under-18s, I think there were 5 or 6 nationally. The Boomerangs and the Woomerers, limited time together, whereas they used to have these big carnivals. So it's great they're putting forward this idea of an Indigenous rookie spot next year, but the AFL Players Association is saying we need to approve this because it's part of the CBA, an extra spot. And when you've got guys like Sean Burgoyne and Eddie Betts saying that is not the answer, and it could only make the problem worse because of this sort of idea of tokenism and sending a young kid into an environment when he's really not ready. So I just hope that more work is being done in development than what we're hearing about.
Excellent point, Gary. Yeah, and clearly with the NEFL, once it was axed, I mean, the biggest losers probably were the NT Thunder. I mean, that was such a great pathway or funneling of
there was $1 million in WA coming from Rio Tinto, and then they had issues and the AFL dropped them as a sponsor. So that $1 million is now $100,000. Well, you look at what Naz does in a big game. You look at what Cozzy does in a big game. Shai Bolton, you need to start. These guys are putting bums on seats because they have a brilliance that is not matched, I've got to say, by players from other backgrounds. So this is obviously a big investment, and I think more of the media rights money should be going into redeveloping these Indigenous pathways.
Ahmed, good afternoon to you.
Yeah, afternoon, Bruce, Caro and Leigh. Caro, you were 100% right. It's really odd for Lachie Neale to meet up his former ex-coach, Ross Lyon, and having a dinner about him joining the Saints. And, because he left Fremantle nearly 8 years ago to join Brisbane Lions for more success. And, whatever Neale decides, if he wants to go to Collingwood or St Kilda or even South Australia, and as a Lions supporter, because he has my decision 100%, will support him. And I wouldn't be surprised if Lockie were to stay in Brisbane. And, Kara, it's a bit odd for him to meet up with Ross. Why would he do that?
Well, because he's clearly thinking about moving to Melbourne, is what I think. And I think Leigh probably agrees. He's not decided, but he's certainly thinking about it.
We're thinking that Ross would have been having dinner with him last night, whether he was contracted for Brisbane for another 3 years.
They catch up regularly anyway.
Well, so we're told. I mean, we only hear what
do.
So we're told.
But this was different. This was different.
You mean it was planned to be different, or was just coincidentally different? Because all of a sudden we'd planned a month ago to have dinner. Okay, you're talking to other clubs. We'll ask you about your interest in St Kilda too.
The fact
Which
that
of them?
Lenny Hayes was asked to go along makes it different, I think.
Okay, yeah.
Ahmed, thanks for your call. Darren, welcome to 3AW Footy.
Hi, team. Just very quickly before I make my point, I'm happy to hear that stat of the Hawthorn long streak because, Leigh, as you know, the longer your winning streak is, the closer you are to a loss. So hopefully the Demons can fire up in an hour or so. But just on the Lockie Neal thing and just a bit more broadly in general, there's every chance that Brisbane have got some games against, let's say, less credentialed teams in the next few weeks, and so do Freo, that they probably rest some players going in. And it might well be that it is a media circus in Perth and Lockie Neal doesn't even come to Perth to play West Coast because I reckon Brisbane probably beat them without him. But also over here, there's big talk, I don't know whether it's in Melbourne or not, Luke Jackson is a huge chance to win the Brownlow, I reckon, this year. And there's talk of Freo starting to rest him, once, twice, three times. I just wondered what you all think of resting these gun players who might well, I know the Brownlow's individual award and all that, but it's still worth winning, I would have thought.
That is an interesting point, that. I mean, the Brownlow's obviously an AFL award, but Geelong, who've been leading the pack in managing players for a generation now, they have, I think, in the club championship, the best 21 games.
Yep, they changed it.
That a player's not losing out, certainly at club level, by resting them. And that Fremantle they've earned the right, but as an individual player, if you're like that, Luke Jackson, use the example, well, okay, Brownlow medals, club champion, whatever. If you say, listen, we want you to not play this week, which means there'll be less chance you win the club championship and less chance you win the Brownlow. Now, but you've got to really convince the player his medium term later in the season is going to be improved by having a week off. Otherwise, the player's ego is going to say, listen, I'm in line for these awards. I want to keep playing.
But I think a lot of clubs have gone down the Geelong path now, haven't they?
I don't know. I haven't heard of any others that have changed their system of voting so that you don't necessarily. There's a 21 out of the 23. The best 21 games get pounded in the club championship. I haven't heard of any other club who's actually gone down that path, Carol.
Oh, okay. I thought
Geelong
they
have been
had,
doing it for a long time.
I can't tell you which one, but you talk about results, worrying more about results than individual awards. I mean, Collingwood are now, on the cusp of missing the top 10. I mean, they could well make it, but they're blind ball. And their two games when they didn't play Scott Pendlebury, and they were winnable games, and they lost, I think one was a draw against Hawthorn, and the other one was a narrow loss to the Sydney Swans. You just think, well...
Yeah, but I think you've got to do it to get the best out of those veteran players. Like Geelong...
Park the Brownlow for 1 minute, Leigh. You're right, so many players now, and for years, I know as far back as in the mid-90s at the club that I follow, players have built into their contracts bonuses for not just winning the best and fairest, top 5 finish, top 10 finish.
Yeah.
So you're saying a player just misses out on one of those brackets, and it could be quite a significant amount of money for...
And clubs have got to keep that in mind. Like, for instance, at Geelong at the moment, Patrick Dangerfield, there's 7 games to go. Patrick Dangerfield would have to rest one of those. Because once you get to September, you just got to play. You just got to keep going and do the best you can. So I think to a varying degree, Fremantle a good example because there's so many wins in front. If you've got to lessen our chances this week to be better in a month's time, then we should think about doing it. And Luke Jackson might not be in that category, but the principle, I think, is valid, that resting players to make you better long-term, and that's what Collingwood did with Scott Pendlebury.
But they could have rested him for Anzac Day, which was an easier...
Well, all those things, I guess, come into it, Cara, as you say. But I think as I say, Geelong have one of the reasons they've been really good for a long period of time is I think they've led the pack in trying to manage the players to get the best out of them in the long term.
One more quick call before the lethal injection. John, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I just wanted to ask about the two sort of distinctive models that football clubs are adopting in relation to drafting players. Like we've seen North Melbourne, Richmond Eagles and Essendon effectively rely on the draft. They go down the ladder, they rely on the draft to get their draft picks right and then to sort of come up. But it seems to be taking like 5 to 6 years before they even look like getting any better. And the other model is the Geelong model, where they just seem to bring in the free agent and top up and maybe not be contenders every year, but sit in the finals and keep all their stakeholders and members happy.
They managed to find some diamonds in the rough as well.
A lot of
Geelong.
rookies who become really good players.
Yeah.
They do that brilliantly.
And Collingwood were players, not picks, wasn't it? But that mentality seems to be. I think you were going to mention them, John. That seems to be changing. What do you think, Leigh? It's a balance, isn't it?
It is a balance, but I think a lot of clubs, like if you drop down towards the bottom of the ladder, you lose your destination club status, really.
Yep.
So then you've got to use your early picks in the draft to try and get your good draftees. And if you can do that, like North Melbourne have probably been a good example of this. St Kilda did it before this year. This year they went and got some players from other clubs, but they sort of were devoting getting
4 or 5 years into
the
the
best
draft.
they could in the draft. So I think there's a bit of a cycle of where your Collingwood are interested. They're middle of the list at the moment, but yeah, if you believe what you read, they would like to pop in a Lockie Neal to help them sort of be better straight away.